Hey everybody, what's going on? And welcome to Guns N' Roses Central, and we're almost done the True Story episodes for all these songs on Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. The only one left is November Rain, and then we're off to the next album, or maybe I'm going to be covering unreleased songs, so you guys will have to wait and see. But today we're talking about one of my favorite Guns N' Roses songs, Don't Cry. Now there's two versions of Don't Cry. There's the original one, which you guys are probably most familiar with. That's the one that plays in the background of the music video, and then of course Guns N' Roses have played the song live a number of times since 1991, and even before then in the club days. We'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. There's the alternate version, which basically features pretty much the same instrumental track with a couple minor changes, and then it just basically has alternate lyrics. And then there's the demo, which is also featured on the single. Now the demo's been kicking around for quite a long time. Talk about who actually wrote the song. So the song was written by Izzy and Axel, and the song is found on Use Your Illusion 1 as track number 4. That's the original version, and then you've got the alternate version on Use Your Illusion 2. It's track number 13. And then later on, the song was included on the Guns N' Roses Live Era album that came out in 1999, as well as the Greatest Hits album that came out in 2004. And the song features Matt Sorum on drums, Duff on bass, Slash plays both lead and rhythm guitars, and Izzy plays rhythm as well. Dizzy Reed plays the piano in the song, and vocals, Axel is actually joined by Shannon Hoon of Blind Melon and Izzy. And Shannon actually sang background vocals on several Guns N' Roses tracks on the Illusions records, including The Garden and You Ain't the First. And he actually performed Don't Cry with his band in Indiana years before the actual song came out, because he actually had the demo on bootleg. And Shannon actually appears in the music video for Don't Cry, and he actually joined Guns N' Roses on stage several times to sing the song with Axel, including Chicago in '92 and Inglewood in 1991. Now the 1991 Inglewood performance is partially shown on the Making Effing Videos, a documentary that they did for Don't Cry. So the song was actually played live for the first time by Hollywood Rose at the Water Club in 1985. So this is sometimes regarded as the first song that Guns N' Roses wrote. I've heard Axel and other members talk about that, and we'll get to that in a bit. It was also on the set list for the GNR's first gig with the Appetite for Destruction lineup on June 6th of 1985. And of course it was played a lot during the Use Your Illusion tour. And then it was not played for a really long time. It wasn't played until 2007. And then they played it a couple times then 2009 they played it a handful of times, and then 2010 they've played it on and off. And even as part of the reunion tour, Guns N' Roses haven't really played the song a whole lot. They alternated out with Patience, so it's like every other concert they play Don't Cry. Now let's talk about the differences between the original version and the alternate version. So only the vocal tracks differ between the two versions, and even then it's only in the verses. However, in those verses not only are the words entirely different, but the meter and melody are also slightly different. So Axel has talked about the two different versions of the song. So he was being interviewed in 1991. He said there will be a version of Don't Cry on both records. One on the first one and one on the second one. The one on the first one is the newly recorded version of the original lyrics, and the second one is the newly recorded version of the alternative lyrics, kind of like a 91 update. It's got different words and melody in the verse, and it kind of happened while I was recording the other one. That's the song that basically one of the reasons we got signed. People in LA that had been our fans since we started playing in clubs were always bummed out that we didn't put it on the record, but we were kind of trying to save what we considered one of our ace cards, because we didn't know if we'd sell 5 records, you know. And Axel said the same story when Guns were performing live in Inglewood about a month or so before the Illusions records came out. And some people even consider there to be a third version of Don't Cry. I don't really consider it a third version because it's just a demo that was recorded during the Appetite sessions back in the late 80s. Duff has also talked about the songs in his own book. He said, talking about the time when we entered the band, Izzy and Axel already had some songs and the other guys knew them. Think About You, Anything Goes, Move to the City, Shadow of Your Love, and Don't Cry. And we did sped up punk rock versions of the Stones' Jumpin' Jack Flash and Elvis Presley's Heartbreak Hotel. Duff also said it's one of the first songs we started playing as a band in the incarnation, and it really put us across the clubs. It was something we would have recorded up for the first record. Money was not allotted to do as much as we wanted to do. In the same interview, Duff also said we've added a lot of new life to it, especially with Matt playing the drums. It has kind of taken a new life, which is cool. And according to Axl, the song was actually written a slight time before Guns N' Roses actually formed. He said, when we first wrote the song, it was the first song for Guns N' Roses. Actually, we weren't Guns N' Roses yet, but it was starting to become a reality. And Izzy and I wrote a song and decided that we needed to get back together, which is one of our most Hanoi Rocks influenced songs. We knew we had something. I was sitting outside the Roxy and I was really in love with this person, and she was realizing that it wasn't going to work. She wanted to do other things and she was telling me goodbye, and I sat down and started crying a little bit, and she was like, "Don't cry." Next night we got together and wrote the song in 5 minutes. And Axl also stated that the girl who told him to don't cry was actually tattooed on his arm. And Axl actually revealed too that when Guns would open up for different speed metal bands, they would actually do all their fast songs first, but then they'd also do Don't Cry, and the guys with spikes all the way up to their arms came up to us and loved that song. Axl also talked about how he liked the alternate version a bit more back in 1991. He said, "I prefer the new version because the original is kind of a nostalgic piece. It takes me through the history of Guns N' Roses and everything I've been through in LA." He also talked about how he actually came up with the lyrics for the alternate version, or when it happened. He said, "While I was recording the original version, I started hearing another melody and words in my head. It really surprised me, so I told Mike Klink, our producer, put on another track. I don't know what's happening here, but I've got a different song coming through my head, and I want to get that on tape." Slash also talked about the song in his autobiography from 2007, talking about the first rehearsals with Guns N' Roses. He said, "After 3 nights, we had a fully realized set that also included Don't Cry and Shadow of Your Love, and so we unanimously decided that we were now fit for public consumption." He was also talking about the period after the Hell tour to Seattle. He said, "Nicky Beats had a rehearsal studio in his house in Silver Lake where we'd go, set up our gear and jam. And that is where the whole band really came together. Izzy had something called Think About You that we liked, and we revisited Don't Cry, which was the first song I'd ever worked on with Izzy." Slash also talked about an interview in 1992 about working on Don't Cry. He said, "When I first hooked up with Axl and Izzy, that was the song Izzy and Axl were working on, so that was my first having to deal with another guitar player. It was on Don't Cry. I'm going to Izzy's house and hanging out with them to try and build some sort of chemistry, so that song is pretty classic in my mind." And even though Dizzy Reed wasn't a member of Guns N' Roses when they wrote the song, he talked about remembering the song back in the club days. He said it was the only audible song because the rest of Guns N' Roses songs were so loud. Now, Guns N' Roses released Don't Cry as a single the week before the Illusions records came out. So the Illusions records came out September 17th, 1991. Don't Cry was released on September 10th, along with an accompanying music video. Now, missing from the music video was Guns N' Roses rhythm guitarist Izzy Stradlin. Now, while Izzy had quit the previous August at their last show in Wembley Stadium, it wasn't officially announced that he was quitting the band until November of 1991. And Izzy's absence is actually referenced in the music video, where you can see a white sign saying, "Where's Izzy?" Now, the song did quite well when it was released as a single, so the song reached the top 10 in many countries, including number 8 in the UK singles chart and number 10 on the US Billboard Hot 100 charts. Now, even though Guns N' Roses had tremendous success with their song Don't Cry, as well as the music video, that didn't stop them from attracting controversy. So Guns N' Roses in the year 2000 were actually sued over the song. So a songwriter named Bobby Martin claimed that Don't Cry is substantially similar to a tune he wrote in 1978. Now, if you guys want to hear Bobby Martin's song, I've linked to it down below. You guys can listen to it and let me know what your thoughts are. Frankly, I don't really think there's a lot of similarities, and I've never been able to find out what actually happened with the lawsuit. Now let's talk about the video for Don't Cry. Now, Don't Cry was directed by Andy Monahan, who had actually directed the videos for November Rain as well as Estranged. And Don't Cry forms the first part of the trilogy in terms of the music videos with November Rain and Estranged. So I want to talk a little bit about some interesting things you may not know about the video. So the actual therapist you see in the actual music video, her name is Susie London. She was Axl's actual real-life therapist, so she actually played herself in the music video. And even though Izzy did not participate in the video, there were scenes that were actually written specifically for Izzy. The scene towards the end of the video where Axl walks in and points at himself and then walks through the actual wall, that was originally written for Izzy. However, they had to rewrite it that after it was revealed he didn't show up for the actual video shoot. And the scene where they show Axl's tombstone, it only reads 1990. Some people are wondering why didn't it read 1991, because that's when the video was shot. According to Axl, the reason it says 1990 is for him, 1990 was a very suicidal year. That was the year that his actual marriage to Erin Everly fell apart. And the actual scene you see at the beginning of the music video where him and Stephanie Seymour are fighting over the gun is actually taken from a real life event that happened when Axl was married to Erin Everly. So in an interview that Axl did in 1992, he had this to say about that scene from Don't Cry. He said, with our video for Don't Cry and the fight that Stephanie Seymour and I had over the gun, you don't necessarily know what's going on, but in real life that happened with Aaron Everly and myself. I was going to shoot myself, we fought over the gun and I finally let her win. I was kind of mentally crippled after that. Before shooting our documentary, I said, this seems really hard because it really happened. And the night that we wrote the scene, my friend Josh said, okay, how are you going to play that? He wanted to rehearse and I was like, look, leave me alone, but he kept pushing until finally I stood up. I had this cigarette lighter that looked like a real gun and I said, look, I'm going to do it like this. And I just went over and slammed around in the hallway a bit and threw the gun and said, is that good enough for you? And he said, yes. And Axel later on talked about how it was really weird to reenact these scenes with somebody he was currently involved with in a relationship. Talked about the scene in the same interview where they were in the actual pool. He said, we had 4 guys in scuba gear and we were in a swimming pool, camera and crew everywhere, bubble machines, and the camera comes swinging overhead and they would say, go. And they'd pull out the floater and all of a sudden I'd have to go into drowning and I'm drowning. Then I'd flash the peace sign and they'd come in and rescue me and pull me to the side of the pool. And after 3 takes, I was done. I couldn't do it again because I was so exhausted. But it was a real mind trip because that's how my life felt for I don't know how many years, especially my last relationship. I've always felt like I was drowning and being pulled down, trying to save us both, being pulled down and everything. When I went back to the trailer, all of a sudden I broke down for a bit because I was experiencing that, okay, now that's over and you've expressed it, got it out of your system. And if you guys watch the Making Effing Videos documentary for Don't Cry, you'll see a scene where Axel pushes somebody into the pool when they don't expect it. That person is John Reese. He was actually Guns N' Roses tour manager during the Use Your Illusion tour. And he also appears in the VH1 documentary that they did on Behind the Music for Guns N' Roses. Now let's talk a bit about where they actually shot the music video. So a lot of it was shot in LA. The actual rooftop scene you see in the video was shot in downtown LA on the rooftop of the Transamerica Center. It's no longer called the Transamerica Center, it's now called the AT&T Center. And according to Peter Barron, who actually worked with Guns N' Roses, he talked about filming on top of the Transamerica Center in downtown LA. He said, we had 2 helicopters, it was mayhem. We got into a lot of trouble from the city because we completely stalled traffic on a Friday night. And of course, Don't Cry also featured Axel's then girlfriend Stephanie Seymour. And Peter Barron also talked about what it was like to have them both on the set at the same time. He said, when the Don't Cry shoot finally ended, I got on the freight elevator by myself to go down to my car. I pressed the button, and just as the doors start to close, who walks in but Axel and Stephanie Seymour, and they proceed to make out. I'm not going to say he was dry humping her, but he was dry humping her. He just did not care that there was someone else in the elevator. And he was a rock star, and he was having a rock star moment. And in addition to actually filming at the Transamerica Center, they also filmed part of the video at Chateau Marmont as well. Now, the thing that's really strange with the Guns N' Roses YouTube channel is that they have a video for Bad Apples, which I'm pretty sure nobody had asked for. So when the song came out, it just came out on the album. It was never released as a single. It never had a music video, but somebody created a music video for Bad Apples, and it basically just recycles footage from the Don't Cry music video. So if you guys haven't seen it, go check it out. Now, Don't Cry was played quite a bit during the Use Your Illusion tour, and most of the times when Guns would actually play the song live, they would perform the original version that's found on Use Your Illusion 1, but there were several instances where they actually performed the alternative version or the alternate version of Don't Cry. The first instance that they did this was actually at the Great Western Forum in Inglewood, LA, back on August 2nd. Shannon Hoon actually came out and played with them, and you're probably wondering, well, you're showing the August 3rd screenshot. The only reason I'm doing that is because there is no pro shot footage of August 2nd. But there is audio footage of the actual August 2nd show where they performed Don't Cry, so I've actually linked to it down below if you guys want to go check it out. The only other instance where they performed Don't Cry with the alternate lyrics was almost a year later in Czech Republic when Guns N' Roses played Prague. Now there is footage, part of it is pro shot footage from MTV and the other footage is just fan shot footage, so I've linked to that down below as well. Now let's talk about where the song ranks on the best to worst Guns N' Roses song list. So according to Medium.com, they ranked both the original and the alternate version. Some of the other lists only ranked the original version. So they ranked the original as number 19 and the alternate version as number 18 out of 80 or so songs. So it doesn't rank as high as I thought it would have on their list. It's definitely higher up on my list. And Spin.com ranked it number 13 on their list, and they're only evaluating the original version, not looking at the alternate version. That does it for this episode of Guns N' Roses True Story. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to hit the like button if you enjoyed this episode of GNR True Story, and be sure to hit the subscribe button if you love Guns N' Roses as much as I do, and be sure to follow me on social media. The links to my social media channels, including Twitter and Facebook, are linked to in the description box below. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.